Have you ever felt like you've been walking around in circles? For the last several weeks, I know I have. I feel like I've been doing the same things, and I've been praying the same prayers, and I've been believing God for the same promises, but nothing seems to change. Like, you ever felt that way? You're just like waiting, and you just feel like giving up, and you're like, man, this is so silly. Well, you're not the only one. Let me encourage you. There's this guy in the Bible who I'm sure he felt some of those same feelings, and his name is Joshua. You see, after the death of Moses, Joshua became the leader of the Israelites. And check this out. God reassures Joshua by saying this in chapter 1, verse 5. It says, quote, "As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. Now take my people and step into the land that I promised them." And actually later we see God tasking Joshua with taking down Jericho, that large city. I'm sure you've heard of it. But something strange happens when Joshua arrives at the edge of Jericho. Listen to this. Instead of telling him to invade the city, God asks Joshua to circle Jericho for 7 days. As I'm thinking about that, like, that would be a tough pill for me to swallow. If I'm Joshua, I'm going, okay, God, nice. I've got a better plan though, and it involves breaking down that city gate and rushing right into it, right? But God's plan, it doesn't always make sense to us, and he doesn't always operate on our schedule. And so Joshua, check this out. He circles Jericho 13 times. And I feel like so often we feel like we're circling, like we're doing the same thing and we're believing in the same promises. And we kind of know what God wants to do, but we don't always feel like super confident about it. At times, I think we even feel scared or like discouraged. But let me remind you, the one thing God is after is our obedience. Because, like, think about this. God could have snapped his fingers at any time, just like Thanos in Avengers, and the walls would have come crashing down. But he asks Joshua to circle 13 times. It actually reminds me of this story that I heard recently about Arabian horses. They go through some of the toughest training in order to get them through the Middle Eastern desert. And they've got to trust and obey their master. And so the way that they test this obedience is the master will deprive them of water for days. And finally, when they get to the edge of a water or like a lake or just any, like a feeding trough, they'll take them right there. They'll let them get super close as they're about to drink it, and then they'll whistle for them to return to the master. Think about that. The water's right there in front of them. They could easily lap it up into their mouth, but the master is testing their obedience. Will they, in the face of that temptation, in the face of all that good stuff, turn around and go back to the master? And the ones that do are then offered as much water as they can possibly drink. Like, think about this. The trainer knows what the horse needs, and he's not going to allow them to die of thirst, but they've got to learn to trust the master. In the same way, I think that's what God does with some of us sometimes. He knows what we need, and he knows how to supply it, but we've got to learn to trust and obey him. And so when it feels like we're circling, God says this in Joshua chapter 1, verse 9. Check this out. Verse 9 says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. So for me, I'm going to have to come to terms with that, because there's going to be moments in my life where fear and discouragement are present. Like, I should actually anticipate fear in big decisions. I should expect discouragement to come knocking on my door when I'm waiting on the Lord. But I have been commanded by God to press into that. I've actually been commanded to push into that fear. God acknowledges that fear is going to be present, but he also promises that he will be there with us through it all. And so for all of us who are circling, I'm going to encourage you, continue stepping out in faith and walk in obedience. Expect discouragement. Don't be surprised by fear, but step into that. Push past it. Take steps of faith. Be willing to take that first step even when you can't see the rest of the staircase. God's got us. And I know it sometimes can be terrifying and it can be discouraging, but when God calls you to do something, he will equip you. And the same way that he was with Moses, he will be with you. And he's been with me every step of the way. He just wants to see if I'm willing, ready, and able. Because God is looking for your obedience before fulfilling the promise. And just like Joshua saw the walls come crumbling down, I believe that we can experience breakthrough moments when we trust and obey the word of the Lord. Thanks for joining us, and God bless you.